Hello and welcome to the channel and a new series I'm doing covering all of the Space Marine factions so we can have a talk about Armour of Contempt and how you can change your list in order to maximise the potential value from Armour of Contempt. I'm joined today by Will from Team War Masters. How are you doing today, Will?
I am doing great, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm good. This is the one I'm glad I started on because the Dark Angels are my favourite. So, yeah, they're in a pretty good spot, firstly, let's just say at this point in time.
Yeah, I think there's Dark Angels, you rarely saw them winning tournaments, but you definitely saw them troubling the top tables. There's a lot of just sheer rules attached to a Dark Angels list, so they managed to maintain competitiveness where quite a few other Space Marine chapters really haven't.
No, absolutely. And from our point of view, a lot of the units that were the best previously are pretty much still going to be the way to go, especially because Armour of Contempt really does wonders for Deathwing. We were speaking just before recording about Ravenwing and wishing it had maybe gone the other way and Ravenwing had gotten the big buff, but it doesn't look like that's going to be the case, does it?
Yeah, I think the really important thing I've noticed from Armour of Contempt is that it works better when you start off with a better armor save. If you're thinking about it, you're like if you start off on a 2-up armor save and you're facing AP1, instead of 2 shots going through, now 1 shot's going through. That's basically meaning you're getting double your wounds.
Yeah.
When you're thinking about the stuff which gets good, or which is already good for Dark Angels, everything had a 2-up armor save. We're talking Deathwing here. It's sometimes oppressive numbers of Terminators.
No, that's a great point to touch on. I think that there is definitely a multiplier effect when it comes to defensive abilities, and so Armour of Contempt absolutely very popular on those Deathwing Terminators. For anyone who's just not familiar with Deathwing Terminators, what is it that makes them so good? What kind of buffs can you actually apply to them?
So the thing with a Deathwing Terminator is they're like a normal Space Marine Terminator, so they're toughness 4, 3 wounds each, 2-up armor save, 5-up invulnerable save. You can give them a Storm Shield, which gives them +1 to effectively to their armor, and a 4-up invulnerable save. But the thing with Deathwing Terminators specifically is if you run them in a specific Dark Angels Vanguard detachment, which only has Deathwing in them, first of all, pretty much all of those Terminators, bar the really sort of powerful Deathwing Knights, get objective secured, which means that they're much harder to take off an objective.
Yep.
And then they also come with inbuilt transhuman physiology, which, for those who don't play Space Marines, means you can only be wounded on a 4 or more, regardless of the strength of the weapon.
In terms of your actual Terminator selection, you've got a pretty interesting spread here. What are the arguments for the different variations of Terminator?
Yeah, so in my list I've got Relic Terminators with Lightning Claws and Stormbolters. I've got Deathwing Terminators. For those who don't know, you can mix and match any type of assault and shooty Terminators, but I've gone for predominantly Chain Fists and Stormbolters. And then I've also got some Deathwing Knights. So the reason I use Relic Terminators in general is because they are significantly cheaper. Frankly, if I had 10 more Terminators, I'd probably replace another brick with them, but they're now sold out from Games Workshop for the foreseeable future.
Fair enough.
The Deathwing Knights are an interesting one because they don't actually benefit from Armour of Contempt because they already have their Storm Shields, so they're already on a 1-up save. The reason I take them is because they're really reliable combat damage. Because they're hitting on 2s with damage 3 weapons, the Knightmaster with a mastercrafted Flail of Unforgiven can chew through squads because his damage carries over. So if you fail a save on a 1-wound model, instead of just having 1 model die, you can have 3 models die. And when you stack a whole load of rerolls on top of that, it means that they can go through anything, really.
One thing about your list that I think a lot of people are doing, and I still think people will find interesting if you're not very familiar with the Dark Angels, I think it will surprise people how few characters you're running. Because, of course, if you take a Deathwing army, there is some sensational character support. Azrael can give you a 4-up invuln. You can take an Apothecary who can give you a 6-up Feel No Pain and res a Terminator every single turn. Even something like Ezekiel allows you to get, an extra attack. And then you've got the banner that allows you to shoot or fight on death, and it applies a -1 damage to one of your Terminator units. So there's huge potential with the characters, but I'm assuming I'm right in saying this, the main problem is that if you play a Deathwing army, it is already a very elite army. And so, as much as we'd all like to have these characters, if you take too many of them, you just won't have enough to actually play the game and get those points.
Yeah, that's it. And actually, there are a number of characters I've actually taken out of this list. Outriel's one, and Ancient is one of them as well, because the kind of defensive buffs that they provide and the kind of overall support they give to the list isn't actually needed because of Armour of Contempt. Or actually, maybe not Armour of Contempt, but how the general meta is looking in terms of what kind of people you're facing.
Yeah.
The thing with Dark Angels is they're very durable, but they have very specific tools for that durability, and sometimes you don't need those tools if you're facing, let's say, at the moment, a lot of mortal wounds, or a lot of D3 plus 3 damage.
In terms of this second detachment, this patrol, why did you feel it necessary for you to add this, non-Deathwing element to the army?
So this non-Deathwing element to the army is, interestingly, something I'm experimenting with in this list. I don't necessarily need it, but what I want out of it is something to mitigate the slowness of a Deathwing army, especially in early turns, and just allow me to put out certain units and collect certain points, and also give me a little bit more presence on a board, because otherwise if I'm running 3.5 large bricks of Terminators, that's actually not a very large sort of footprint to spread out, especially if I'm wanting to hide them and mitigate the damage they take.
Very cool. Yeah, no, very good. And, that Infiltrator denier is just always very strong. And so in terms of stratagem support for the army, of course, we're staring down at this point in time this, game-wide reduction in CP. So what are the stratagems you find you use the most? If you're going to have to be more disciplined, what are going to be your go-to strats?
The thing with this list is actually it has quite a balanced use of CP over the course of the game. 1 or 2 CP I'd use every turn is for Fury of the First, which is just +1 to hit on a random Terminator brick. Then there might be some incidental CP which I'd be using on my Deathwing Knights to give them +1 to wound and -1 AP, but that's rather situational. And then there might be, if I'm facing hordes, I would turn off the second rank of fighting for a single CP.
Yeah.
But actually beyond that, it's mostly about just regular CP usage and not really slamming through a whole load in turn 1.
Yeah.
Which means that actually these kind of the way we get CP is probably not going to affect this list too much.
Yeah.
Ravenwing have a whole load more, and actually Ravenwing are the kind of army where you would potentially use your CP a lot more, and a lot more in a whole host right at once. But actually with Deathwing, it's a lot more balanced.
So in terms of secondaries, how do you see this list playing? Do you have a specific plan every time you approach the table?
Yeah, I think the thing with Dark Angels is that people who have played Dark Angels typically know there's a secondary called Stubborn Defiance, which basically gives you ramping victory points for plonking an OBSEC unit on an objective and keeping it there for an entire game. So that naturally leads you into, basically, depending on how the secondaries are categorized, you have 2 of your secondaries. Either you pick Stubborn Defiance and To the Last, or potentially a variation of To the Last, or you pick Stranglehold and Oath of Moment. Oath of Moment is the Space Marine one. And then the third one is typically something like Raise Banners.
Interesting. And you have got a Psyker in there, so you can do Psychic Interrogation. And that's it. That was kind of all I wanted to cover for this video. I hope this has given you a good insight into how the Dark Angels will work. I think undoubtedly, seeing lots of Terminators, the fact that you're just dropping the Storm Shields and you're taking more Relic Terminators and Stormbolt Power Fist Terminators means there's going to be even more Terminators on the board than ever. I'm sure people are very excited for that. Thank you so much for coming on, Will.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure to talk.
No problem at all. Will is a member of Team War Masters who do have an Instagram. There'll be a link to that in the description, so do go check that out. They regularly go to tournaments in the UK. But thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it was useful. As I say, I'm going to do a bunch of these videos talking about the Space Marine factions and other factions, and I'll see you in the next video.